With potentially the most entertaining opening episode to a show I have ever seen, the first two episodes of Zom 100 have been an absolutely wild ride, and I can't see it slowing down anytime soon. Usually it takes me a bit to get actually invested into shows, but after watching through the first 10 seconds of episode 1, I was completely hooked. The animation was absolutely beautiful, and as the story unfolded throughout the episode, it just reeled me in further and further. I went in almost completely blind, having never even heard of the series until last week, but with it being a zombie show, I had a bit of reservation before actually starting the first episode, because most of the shows are just terrible and not really enjoyable for me, and the zombie genre of media has had a pretty massive impact with things like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Shaun of the Dead, 28 Days Later, World War Z, Train to Busan, and The Walking Dead, to just name a few. And I remember a much younger version of myself looking up zombie anime and stumbling upon the GOAT of all shows, High School of the Dead, and that plot was just entirely perfect, obviously. But I've had a big love for zombie-related media as long as I can remember, but it's really hard to actually nail the genre for me, because most shows and movies I end up watching are just terrible because I have a lot of unnecessary expectations for things to live up to, and when they just don't end up meeting that criteria, it just kind of ruins the whole thing for me. And looking at zombie stuff specifically, there's just so many factors that creep in, with basically every iteration of zombies being slightly different from the last, and different enough that it's just hard to get a more universal zombie feel that you think of. Like, obviously apart from the whole living dead that consumes the living, but some of them only eat brains, some of them are semi-intelligent, some of them sprint, some of them are just rabies on steroids, some are infection-based only, others are entire cemeteries coming back to life. It's really just a broad idea of what a zombie is, that every new iteration you basically have to relearn what the zombie is for this series. And so far, this show has a pretty good idea of what a zombie is, at least for now. It really just fits in nicely with what I personally want from zombies in media. But that's not even really where the focus of this series is. It seems like the main focus of the show is more about being free from responsibility and getting to enjoy life, with the zombies being more of like a backseat secondary idea and catalyst for the freedom. Like a corporate zombie finally becoming free from work due to an actual zombie outbreak. There's just something almost poetic about it. In a lot of these kind of stories, there's always like a couple characters that absolutely thrive in the chaos of everything, where they can like actually let loose and become someone that they've always wanted to be or needed to be. But it feels a bit different in a series where they're kind of more laid back, and instead of thriving and being some like really important character who's going out of his way to save people and actively hunting zombies and stuff, and just being like a stereotypical hero in these situations, Tendo just wants to relax and do his own things that he wasn't able to do while working his job and just being absolutely miserable. He's working for an extremely exploitative production company where they make commercials and stuff, and he's just horribly overworked and sleep deprived, but he sticks with the company because it's the path that he chose. And I suppose there's something respectable about it, but it leads to such a terrible existence, and you know it's really bad when a literal apocalypse feels like heaven compared to going to work. Like, the zombie apocalypse doesn't even matter to him. The only thing that matters is that he doesn't have to go to work. And that's pretty different from what I'm used to in zombie media, and it's almost refreshing to have someone like that in a character, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to that character, because no one wants to fucking work. If a zombie apocalypse happened today, I feel like most people would just feel a complete freedom after all of the fear and panic sets in, right? Maybe it's just me, but I feel like in the given scenario, it would be such a massive weight off of your shoulders where nothing really matters anymore, and you're completely free to do whatever you want. Like, you're telling me I don't have to pay student loans or taxes again? Hell yeah, sign me up. Most people would want to survive, though, obviously. And just the fear from the entire situation would probably be extremely overwhelming, but you're free, you know? And it kind of makes you wonder at the same time, with this character being as like excited about the zombie apocalypse as he is, Like, how accurate is that to actually working in a similar job in Japan today? Like, are most salary workers just thinking that a literal apocalyptic event like zombies would be so much better than going to work another day? There's something extremely wrong with that. But it's also another form of escapism where it's like, a lot of people probably put themselves in those situations in their head where it's completely unrealistic, but they just kind of want to escape from their current responsibilities, which I think this show represents that mentality. The show is extremely colorful and gruesome at the same time, so it's this like very vibrant, inviting world, but at the same time everything around you is just falling apart into absolute chaos. When I think of zombie movies and shows, I think of more like darker palettes and more moody atmosphere with more like grime and just dust on the surface to really encapsulate that immense fear of the situation almost. But this show is like not even remotely that. It's so unnecessarily over the top that it makes the entire show just so much better than it should be. Like, it blends comedy into the zombie genre so well that you almost forget entirely that zombies are even an issue. Like, the main character's overly positive attitude during such a horrible situation brings such an interesting mood to the entire thing. Most people are consumed with fear and are like struggling to survive, but he's not. He's just interested in doing his own thing, and he ends up writing a list of things that he wants to do before he ends up becoming a zombie, and he's not really that worried about surviving and going through like typical motions of zombie stories. So it's almost like a bunch of contradicting styles working seamlessly together. For some reason, it just works. And after the introduction of the second character, I feel like that's how the story's gonna end up progressing with the character dynamics as well. I don't remember if we were given a name for her in the second episode, but looking it up, her name is Mikazuki, and she is like the complete opposite of Tendo. Where Tendo has the list of things he wants to do before becoming a zombie, she has a list of things to do to avoid becoming a zombie, which immediately brings forth that contrasting views of the current world they're in, where she's like entirely focused on prioritizing long-term survival over everything else, and isn't really worried about enjoying herself in the situation, where she seems like a much more serious character in comparison to Tendo, where Tendo is just kind of wild and does pretty much whatever he wants because he can. It's kind of like letting a dog off of the leash and he's just doing everything he wants with no actual thoughts going on about the potential consequences of his actions. But right at the end of the second episode, she kind of gives a little hint that like maybe she is willing to bend her own rules slightly. And with that little wiggle room, I think it's going to build up a nice dynamic with the two characters where she's more focused on survival, but he's kind of nudging her to enjoy herself, and then she's going to end up giving in. But that's how I assume the story is going to end up going, where all parties involved just kind of realize that they can do whatever they want, but they're still going to focus on surviving, but they're not going to let it become too serious, which is a very different dynamic than what I'm used to in zombie films, because most characters are very set in stone, like we're going to survive, here's what we're doing. But there's like always moments in shows where there's a bit of relaxation in those moments where people can kind of let loose and just have fun and do their own thing. But this feels like it's going to be a much bigger part of the story where it's the main focus rather than actually surviving. But I could be completely wrong with this assessment. And looking into some more information, it seems like they're going to get some more main cast members, and I'm really looking forward to how all of their different dynamics are going to mesh together, because I don't know anything about the other two characters, but based off of the like intro, they seem like pretty interesting people. So I'm really expecting the show to end up becoming like a small group of survivors that just kind of do things that make them happy and enjoy the end of the world as everything around them kind of falls apart, while also trying to not die. But this show seems like something that is extremely special, and I really hope that it lives up to my own expectations. I'm not going to read any of the manga until after the season has finished airing, just because I don't want to be stuck in that situation of knowing everything that's about to happen and whatnot, which is the exact same situation I'm in right now with Heavenly Delusion. I've just started reading the manga of that after finishing watching it. Amazing show, by the way, if you haven't seen it. I wanted to make a video on that, but I wanted to actually get all of the information because I do know spoilers about that after the anime, and I just wanted to get the full picture of everything before making a video on it. But with this one, I really like this show, so I really just want to talk about it to anyone and everyone who will listen. Anyway, thanks for watching, bye.